Hey, welcome back to Seaside Joe. This is Kenneth Arthur, and today I want to do some Seahawks mock drafts for the 2022 NFL Draft. I'll show you how I go through that, my thought process behind a mock draft, and I'll also talk about Seattle's needs and the prospects in the draft as far as I know them, and it'll give us an opportunity to dig into some players in the future, which I'd be doing at seasidejoe.substack.com. So if you want a Seahawks newsletter talking about Seattle's roster moves, what they have done, what they could do, what they should do in the future to rebuild and get back to the Super Bowl, go to seasidejoe.substack.com, type in your email here, you'll get a newsletter, and that's it. If you don't like it, you can unsubscribe. There's free content every single day. Seaside Joe has gone out for the last 3 years without missing a day, so consider a free sign-up to Seaside Joe. There are going to be some premium posts coming up here in April for the draft, so you're more than welcome to become a regular Joe subscriber. But that's at seasidejoe.substack.com. Can't wait to see you there. Let's talk about the Seattle Seahawks and a mock draft for this upcoming draft. It'll be the most integral, important, and pivotal Seahawks draft in over 10 years, and it's very exciting for the Seahawks to have a top 10 pick and in a draft that could have some very talented non-quarterbacks here. Even though Seattle needs a quarterback, let's see whether or not a quarterback comes to us. Mock draft simulators here in Google, you'll find PFF, Pro Football Network, Mock Draft Machine at the Draft Network. The NFL Mock Draft Database has their own mock draft simulator. I like going to NFL Mock Draft Database to see what they're saying about the mock drafts. They go around the internet, they compile the mock drafts. What are the mock drafts saying? I'll tell you what, it's not necessarily a good sign here for the Seattle Seahawks, I think, if this happens. But this is one of the most popular picks of all mock drafts is Malik Willis to the Seahawks. That's not going to happen in real life or in today's mock draft simulator. And if you disagree with me, tell me in the comments. I'm excited to hear why I'm wrong about Malik Willis and the quarterback class for the 2022 NFL Draft. So go into the comments section, hit subscribe, and tell me what's wrong with me and why I wouldn't possibly do that. You can do that also at seasidejoe.substack.com. Let's find out what happens in the PFF mock draft simulator. If you've never been here before, I got 7 rounds here. I'm only picking for one team. That'll be the Seattle Seahawks. And that's about all I need to know. We've got a fast speed. Why wait? And we know that the draft isn't actually going to go with it's not going to go as we're about to see here in April. It's not going to go. These top 8 picks aren't going to go like PFF says they're going to go. These picks aren't going to go like anybody says they're going to go. All big surprises. By the way, 49ers don't pick until 61st. Rams don't pick until 104th. Next year, the Rams don't have a first-round pick. The 49ers don't have a first-round pick. The Seahawks have 2 first-round picks and 2 second-round picks. So that's something else to keep in mind and to get your spirits up if you were hoping that I would draft Malik Willis, I suppose. But keep your spirits up to that. The Seahawks have the most draft capital in the NFC West over the next 2 years at least, that's for sure. Let's find out, though, what happens. And by the way, PFF's mock, their big board and the mock draft that we'll see today is going to be much different than the big board and the mock drafts that you will see at other websites. And that's not necessarily exclusive to PFF. The ratings that you see around the internet on these prospects, and this is a very telling sign, I think. Wow, look at Jordan Davis and all of that. Jordan Davis right there already. I think Jordan Davis' profile picture weighs more than I do. But the Seahawks or the PFF mock draft rankings, and by the way, Malik Willis down here at 25, but people cannot wait to put him in the top 5. It's something that people feel about quarterbacks. Sam Howell, actually PFF's highest rated quarterback in the draft. So I don't know that the Seahawks are going to go that direction given that they have so many needs, but we will find out soon. Let's find out what happens in a mock draft. We're doing 7 rounds for the Seattle Seahawks. And right off the bat, we should expect Aiden Hutchinson to the Jacksonville Jaguars, and that's what happened. And here are the Seahawks on the clock. Let's find out what happened. Aiden Hutchinson, Kyle Hamilton, Kayvon Thibodeau, Ikem Ekwonu, Derek Stingley, Ahmad Gardner, Evan Neal, Travon Walker. Recently these two names have popped up more and more for me, I think, with the Seahawks in the number 9 pick, thinking that Seattle could get a potential number 1 cornerback out of this draft if they do so in the top 10, giving themselves a pretty good chance of doing that, relatively speaking, with either Stingley or Sauce Gardner. So that could happen, that these guys could go in the top 6. This could definitely happen, and that would leave Seattle thinking of their other needs, which, again, there are plenty of those. This is not going to be a quarterback. This is not going to be Malik Willis. I mean, did the Lions, who needed a quarterback, did they get mocked to Malik Willis? No. Did the Panthers get mocked there? No. How about the Falcons? And I don't know why the Falcons don't have a QB need here. That doesn't really make any sense. The Giants have a QB need. That doesn't really make any sense. I guess here's the Texan needs every position. I don't know why this doesn't say every position other than safety. Even wide receiver is a need. So I don't know why this doesn't say every position. The Seahawks and the Texans are, unfortunately, much closer than some people have been able to admit. But I would say that if you're doubting that, go to seasidejoe.substack.com. This morning's article on Sunday, March 27th, is all about how the Seahawks have a lot of needs. So check that out. We're looking at the board here. I've talked a lot about why offensive tackle and offensive line is going to be super high on Pete Carroll's list of priorities. Right now, the Seahawks have lost both of their starting tackles and even their number 1 backup tackle, I think, with Cedric Ogbuehi. But so when you look at it, you go, okay, offensive line makes sense. I think Evan Neal would rank pretty high for the Seahawks just because he's a day 1 run blocker on the right side. I talked to Rob Staten recently over at SeahawksDraftBlog.com. He tells me Evan Neal is a guard. He tells me Icky is a guard. So these guys are guards, and if that's going to be the case, that is a risky situation for the Seattle Seahawks to use their top 10 pick on a guard, and that's something that I think I want to avoid if I'm the Seahawks and really thinking about how do I fill the left tackle or the right tackle spot with this. Charles Cross, as I've written in the past on Seaside Joe, one of the things that's likable about him is that he may be a day 1 pass protecting left tackle in the NFL. It's something that he does hundreds of times every season at Mississippi State there with Mike Leach and the air raid offense. Just hundreds and hundreds of pass blocking snaps, not a lot of run blocking snaps though, and that's one of my reasons for hesitation with the Seahawks drafting Charles Cross. I also would hesitate thinking that Charles Cross will just simply slide in without any issues at right tackle. This is something that I've seen other websites go for, Charles Cross, just put him at right. Just put him at right. Don't just put him at right, and don't just expect that it's going to work out. That's a concern. But the Seahawks don't have a left tackle either. So it's entirely possible that if the Seahawks are going to move more, I think, responsibility and ownership of the offense over to Shane Waldron and the offensive coordinator there, coming from Sean McVay's system, coming from more of a spread offense or there's going to be a lot more passing perhaps with the Seahawks, but it's going to be very contained passing, I would say. It's going to be that game manager style passing in a Jared Goff mold prior to Matthew Stafford going to the Rams, when things were really working for Jared Goff and the Rams in 2017 and 2018, having a Todd Gurley type weapon in the backfield next to him. So it's entirely possible that the Seahawks MO for offensive tackles will be changing with Shane Waldron and the passing offense and whoever the next quarterback will be. So we have to keep that in mind. And Charles Cross is maybe not so quick to cross him off of Seattle's big board as I said we should do not long ago. But I don't know that Charles Cross is the player who I'm going to take here for the Seahawks. It's just not enough of a all-around slam dunk pick. And I'm not saying you're going to necessarily get any slam dunk picks here, but it's just not enough to take a risk and risk winding up with a Jermaine Ifedi or a James Carpenter or, just anything that's going to be like, okay, well, there's a guy that's on the team and he's starting, and it's not necessarily a need next year. If you go out and you get Charles Cross, you would hope, maybe that left tackle spot isn't a need next year when the Seahawks go into the draft, probably with a top 10 pick and then also Denver's first round pick. And you want to cross that off the list of needs is left tackle and right tackle. And the Seahawks, they have to go get that. And we know that already, but I don't know that Charles Cross is going to move the needle a ton. Conversely, Bernard Raymond at Central Michigan had the most run blocking snaps of maybe any tackle in college football last year with Central Michigan's offense, which was a much stark contrast to the Mississippi State offense. So to have those stark differences here, I would think that Raymond could be higher on Seattle's priority and needs here. But Trevor Penning is also a guy who Rob Staten pointed out as maybe being the guy who makes the most sense in the top 10 at that tackle position for the Seahawks. So is Trevor Penning going to be the pick for the Seahawks in the top 10? That's possible. George Karlaftis for the edge. I think the Seahawks absolutely could be targeting edge here with their first round pick, and there's a lot of ways to go with that. We know that Jermaine Johnson is a name that has popped up quite a few times. And again, it's hard for even me to ignore the way that a website that you're on is ranking these players. And let's keep this in mind. They've got Jermaine Johnson here at 26. Does that give you any hesitation? Does that get in your brain and make you hesitate, like as if PFF, the computer, is going to insult you for being stupid for taking their 26th ranked player at 9? It's going to get you a bad grade from the PFF computers when you're done with this thing. But who gives a shit about that? You really shouldn't. I've talked about the need at wide receiver. It's very real. It's overlooked. And I think that the Seahawks, if there was a guy here at 9 that really blew their minds at wide receiver, I don't know if the Seahawks would necessarily turn that down. There isn't really anybody being touted as that right now. I love Jamison Williams. I love Drake London. I think the Ohio State receivers are super talented. Any of these guys could blow up and be great. I don't think I would lose my mind if the Seahawks drafted a wide receiver in the top 10, to be honest with you. I've said it before. It's absolutely a need, and especially for, again, the Shane Waldron offense. But what I'm going to do instead is just be very not safe, I would say. I'm just going to go ahead and let's find out what happens when we pick Jordan Davis, because he's a football player. He's a 2-down football player maybe, but he could be a really good football player. And, what he's done at Georgia, what he's done at the college game, and that what he did at the combine, the athleticism, could the Seahawks see a higher ceiling for Jordan Davis maybe than anyone else is projecting right now? That was the case for a lot of guys. Aaron Donald has been I'm not comparing him to Aaron Donald, not putting expectations like that on Aaron Donald. Or even like Vita Vea expectations, we'll just see what happens. But I could see him having a higher ceiling as a pass rusher than the expectation. We're going to be wrong about a few things. And at least you're going with a guy who could have been, the Heisman winner for the number 1 defense in college football, a team that's going to have a bunch of first and second and third round picks off of that defense. And Jordan Davis was the leader of that group. And the Seahawks just need some more football players who motivate other football players. So let's go ahead and just take Jordan Davis for the hell of it. And I think that that's just a pick that's not going to get me in hot water with very many people. The Seahawks now have back-to-back picks at the top of the second round. And I've taken a player who's not even necessarily really a need. He's more of a need in some of those qualities I've talked about, leadership, talent, athleticism, rare traits like that. Plus, Al Woods and Quentin Jefferson do not have long-term futures on the Seattle Seahawks. So there is a need coming up for players like Jordan Davis, and you're not going to see many players like Jordan Davis ever again. Second round, a lot of ways to go with this, but Rob Staten convinced me. He pushed this name over and over again, and he's got me thinking that, hey, why not? He's another guy that comes out of an air raid system, but something else that we should keep in mind with the college and the NFL games is that the air raid and the spread offense and the differences between college and NFL offenses are actually much smaller than maybe we have been willing to accept or willing to understand in recent years. I saw Brett Coleman on YouTube talk about this in a video not long ago, and I think he made a great point. And I think that with Shane Waldron and the Seahawks needing an offensive tackle and Abraham Lucas at Washington State being such a good offensive tackle, why don't we just take Abraham Lucas, and it gets you right back on the board for just about anything you want here. And there are cornerbacks, and there are edge players, and there are quarterbacks, and there are linebackers and running backs and all sorts of things that the Seattle Seahawks do need. I'll be more interesting than I could be. And why don't we talk about Troy Anderson? He's a very popular linebacker in this draft, and we know that he had a great combine. He has been shooting up the draft boards, which is always sort of a sign that a guy is going to go earlier than expected and may have a higher ceiling than people expect. Love seeing these guys out of Montana State type teams. Anderson is a converted running back and quarterback who in his one season at linebacker picked up 67 stops. And there's just that thought of, there's more development. There's more room here. There's things that are going to happen here at linebacker. The Seahawks, again, look at this. Don't have a need, quote unquote, at linebacker. But I think that the Seahawks absolutely have a need at linebacker. So it's not really that controversial to me to see the Seahawks pick a linebacker. When you look at the roster, you've got Jordan Brooks and Uchenna Nwosu and Cody Barton and Darrell Taylor. But, we're not talking about a linebacker like Darrell Taylor. We're not talking about linebackers like Ben Burr-Kirven. And I think that when we're talking about a linebacker like Troy Anderson, we're talking about a guy built very, very differently than all these guys. And you want to put him inside there where this name John Radigan is, or Joel Igbinoue. And so I think we're going to take Troy Anderson and add him to the roster and get our asses to the third round where the Seahawks pick 72nd overall. And, oh, wow, I got some trades, man. What do the Baltimore Ravens want to give me, though, Once both teams add pick. I don't even know what they're offering me. But a lot of options here for the Seahawks, and you should really know, I guess, what you want when you're going through these, because there's a lot of names. There's going to be a lot of names. I think we can expect that the Seahawks are looking at a lot of these guys because they have so many needs. James Cook, brother of Dalvin Cook, running back at Georgia. Greg Dulcich, a tight end. But I think, there's definitely that issue here with tight end, and the Seahawks, as much as I would like to take Grayson McCall's buddy, Isaiah Likely, the Seahawks and their absolute needs here at tight end, Wan'Dale Robinson at Kentucky, it's just not great enough for the Seahawks, I think, to take a tight end in round 3 for sure, and probably not round 4 and round 5. Tight end is not something that Seattle should be looking at, not necessarily because it's not a need right now. It's just like the Seahawks have guys for the next 2 years, 3 years. So I'm not going to think about that here with Noah Fant added to the roster recently. Tariq Woolen with the fastest 40-yard dash this year. Kyron Williams, kind of a disappointing final season at Notre Dame. Maybe a limited ceiling there at running back. Heard Jalen Wiedemeyer, they were talking about him falling out of the draft entirely with a bad pro day. A lot of names here that have come up recently, a lot of guys that fill certain needs for the Seahawks. And look at this. Cam Jurgens, who is Rob Staten's top-rated center, ahead of Tyler Linderbaum, still on the board. I like a lot of these guys, running backs, wide receivers. I was even thinking about Sean Ryan, the tackle at UCLA, double dip on tackle. Why not, But since Austin Blythe is not the future at center and Cam Jurgens is right here, get a third-round center right here. Cam Jurgens takes me there. As Maya once said for the Rugrats soundtrack, take me there. I want to go there. Around the 4th round picks, lots of more players who fits these needs. Guys that I was looking at earlier, like BYU running back Tyler Algier, Quarterback Bailey Zappi, loved his story, having his 1 year at Western Kentucky after setting all kinds of records at Houston Baptist. He transfers to Western Kentucky. His Houston Baptist offensive coordinator became the head coach of Western Kentucky, got Bailey Zappi, got wide receiver Jareth Stearns, also from Houston Baptist. They set all kinds of marks, just an insane amount of production from Bailey Zappi and Jareth Stearns. I don't know that he's really got anything in there besides being a career backup, which, the Seahawks could need. But right here, tight end Cade Otton of Washington, probably a lot of you are familiar with him. Thayer Munford, guard at Ohio State. Maybe he's a guy who could come in and compete down the line and help out. Isaiah Spiller, once thought to be maybe a first-round running back, and here's Isaiah Spiller, still available in the 4th round, and not crushing it here on a lot of mock drafts like people expected he would not long ago. Kobe Bryant, lots of athleticism from Kobe Bryant, 6'1", 198 cornerback, and he's got a lot of traits, cornerback traits that make you curious, interested, nice. They make you nice. Zamir White, another running back of note. Nephi Sewell, brother of Penei Sewell and Noah Sewell, who's also over at Oregon. And lots of names here. Another Coastal Carolina guy, Javon Hiley, like him, but don't know if he's going to go here. Verone McKinley, 3rd, once thought to be a first-round pick. So many choices, and I'm not even getting Matt Araiza, who is, of course, the most popular punter in maybe draft history. Smoke Monday, whose name I had an eye on last year. Just the name, but I had an eye on that. Okonkwo, another fast guy. He's a fast guy at tight end. Alec Lindstrom is a guy that I could have waited and taken Alex Lindstrom to be the center maybe instead of Cam Jurgens, and maybe that wouldn't have been so crazy. Velus Jones, another fast guy. Lots of interesting choices here. A lot of ways. Jesse Lukita for an edge option. I mean, I'm pulled this way and that way. We're also in round 4, and these guys are ranked really low. Look at that. For the PFF rankings, at least, and that's just PFF. I think the Seahawks will draft a running back. I think the Seahawks, obviously, they've got to still get a cornerback, I think, at some point. Lessida Smith at Virginia Tech. So many guys that I think make sense to me, but I've got my eye maybe on one name more than the others. So maybe this will be the pick for the Seattle Seahawks. And when that happens, when I make this pick, I just want you to keep in mind that what I was doing prior to making the pick, whether you want to believe me or not, was not, I wasn't just stalling for more time to eventually draft somebody. I wouldn't do that to you. But the guy that I'm going with is Zion McCollum. He's got crazy length at cornerback, Sam Houston State, another small school prospect here for the Seahawks. They take Zion McCollum at cornerback. That ends the 4th round, and hey, we got 32-25. Waiting for the Seahawks' next pick here, round 5. More back-to-back picks, and the Seahawks, hey, they're getting it together. I think these picks are making Seattle much better. 3 picks left to go. Haven't made any trades, and not going to make any trades. The Seahawks, there's stuff that I still haven't filled. Of course, I didn't draft a quarterback. I've only taken 1 tackle and 1 center. No real true edge players. Did get a cornerback, but haven't taken a running back. So that's something that we could take a look at and see what the running back situation is looking like. Tyler Beatty is a guy that I think in the past I've seen as sort of a Seahawky type pick. Sincere McCormick, Max Borghi. A lot of people want the Seahawks to draft him as well. Another Washington State guy. C.J. Verdell, Kennedy Brooks, Eric Gray. These were all highly rated players in college. Abram Smith, a converted linebacker who had a good final season there at Baylor. Tyler Goodson. So many names. Obviously, the Seahawks will pick one that I didn't mention at all. But I think that for me, I think that the Seahawks, I'll go with Sincere McCormick. I think he's got a bit more in him than this 219 big board rank. And at this point, I'm just kind of like throwing out a dart at a running back because that's sort of what you have to do at running back, isn't it? It's sort of that situation. And when you're on day 3, you don't have to throw darts in round 2. If the Seahawks want to take Breece Hall, then great. You're not throwing a dart, really. You're taking Breece Hall or Kenneth Murray. You're taking one of the top-rated backs, and you expect that guy to compete with Rashad Penny from day 1 and maybe to have that job by 2023 as the lone starter. You're not getting that with anybody in the round 5 now, but Sincere McCormick's had some really good traits that could translate to the next level, and you never know. So that's kind of where you're at, going with the you never know. For this next pick, I just think that I'm going to go with a player like Jesse Luketa. The edge player, he's got upside, he's got size.
That's one way to get them pumped up. Just tell them they're on TV.
Look,
they're not even using the seats.
Hey.
Little swing pattern out to once again.
I've seen what I need to see. That was the best play I've ever seen. So we draft Jesse Luketa for the Seahawks, and it's going to be a while here, almost 2 full rounds worth until the Seahawks' next pick. Get through the entire 6th round, as the Seahawks just have a 7th round pick, and this one shouldn't be so hard to do. The Seahawks on the board here, 229. Look at that. Matt Araiza, number 1 prospect on the board. He's still available. If he were a kicker, it would be fun for the Seahawks to draft Matt Araiza. You've got Jordan Stout, the highest-rated kicker here on the board. Matt Araiza does kick the football and field goals and stuff like that. Field goals, not field goals. But Matt Araiza does do that stuff. But that's not why you're drafting Matt Araiza. So that's not going to happen for us today. Kennedy Brooks is still on the board. A lot of players here who the Seahawks will be interested in as undrafted free agents. And look at these quarterbacks. If you just want the Seahawks to take a 7th round quarterback, Caleb Ellaby was a guy who I had identified a few times on Seaside Joe last year when I was going through my quarterback rankings every week for the 2022 NFL Draft. And E.J. Perry, a guy that stood out at the Combine, and Skylar Thompson. And yet, of all the quarterbacks, we know that when Rob Staten came on the Seaside Joe podcast last week, he said Jack Cohn is the guy who I would draft for the Seahawks. And look, I can get him in the 7th round. So Jack Cohn, welcome to the Seahawks. These grades are going to be bad here from PFF, but let's look at them anyway. They're grading my draft. Thanks so much for doing the one thing that I've hated more than anything else, draft grades. How about, so you take this, and then you say, no thank you, not interested. Jordan Davis, D. Abraham Lucas, C. Troy Anderson, D. Cam Jurgens, F. By the way, I guess they're saying he was number 144 in the 72, so I guess that's where the F comes in. Not always makes sense to me. By the way, though, the Seahawks, this is what they do. They get F grades because they take guys different than the consensus or different than what PFF may say. Zion McCollum, they said that's kind of not a reach, 106, 109. Sincere McCormick, Jesse Luketa, Jack Cohn. Wow, I got Jack Cohn 20 spots ahead of their big board, so I get a B. Overall draft grade, a D. And the overall mock draft here, we saw that after the Seahawks selected Jordan Davis, Charles Cross went off the board. Malik Willis to the Vikings. I mean, this is all fake and stupid, but that was the first round of the draft. I think that the Seahawks did super well, actually, so take that, PFF. You've got Jordan Davis, a great football player. Abraham Lucas could be a great tackle. Troy Anderson, a phenomenal specimen at linebacker. Cam Jurgens, a day 1 starting center, perhaps. Zion McCollum got more length and ability and at least more length and upside, I should say, than any cornerback on the Seahawks roster. I think all of this stuff does what Seattle needs to do. Is this any better than the PFN mock draft simulator? Let's find out. Let's go to a fast speed, and the Seahawks are the team. Let's see how this one goes. You want to go here? Oh, it's going, baby. Okay, so Jamison Williams and Garrett Wilson. Look at this, wide receiver. The board's going to immediately look much different, of course. They want me to trade back for This? You want me to go back 15 picks for 2 second rounders? Abso-freaking-lutely not. You want me to go back 8 picks for is this what the value of the draft trade downs are going to be? This one's not terrible. A second round pick for 9 and 14 for 14 and 45. And a second round pick to go back 3 spots, but you get a 2023 second round pick. I'm accepting that. We're not doing any trades today, but okay. Well, I don't know what this is. Okay, wait a minute. Because they're not letting me do that. Oh, you almost tried to trick me into getting it. Something here where PFF or PFN, I don't know if this is on my end or if this is on the end of them. But looks like I'm going. How do you even take I've never used this one. How do you even use this? I don't know if this was necessarily. This is my ranking of the Pro Football Network Draft Simulator because it's not really on me to figure out why this isn't working. You know, I mean, you have time to put me up here for the sign in. It's not really up to me. It's not on me to figure out why this doesn't work. You would think this should just be. This should just be. So that's the Pro Football Network Draft Simulator. How about the Draft Network Draft Simulator? Okay, yeah, let's do the Seahawks. Let's do the 7 rounds. Let's do a fast speed. The Draft Simulator will run until it's your turn. Okay, great. So now again, the Seahawks back on the board. This is better because the Seahawks do have all these needs. If that's, safety, I don't know about that, but Derek Stingley on the board, Travon Walker on the board, Ahmad Gardner, Jermaine Johnson. You know, just because Travon Walker's getting talk as maybe the number 1 pick, if he's going to be there at 9, if he's going to have that sort of upside as an edge rusher, and I would be happy with Stingley, Gardner, Johnson. Stingley, Gardner, Johnson, by the way, one of my favorite players. Jordan Davis. So I'm going to go with Travon Walker and see what happens there. This one is not as fast, I would say, as PFF. Seems like we would take forever to get through this whole draft. So I'm not going to make you necessarily sit through that whole thing. But when the Seahawks get back on the board, I wrote about David Ojabo at Seaside Joe, talking about whether or not it's a smart idea to draft him in the second round after he tore his Achilles on the pro day at Michigan's pro day. So that's a very sad story, and I do think it sets him back at least 1 year. He was a guy who still needed a lot of development, so I think he's set back at least 2 years potentially, and that's why I don't have David Ojabo as a second round pick for the Seahawks unless you were super high on and super sure of like how great he was going to be after he healed. But I think there was too many question marks to really still feel that way about him. Not going to be a quarterback. You've got the running back options here. DeMarvin Leal, once considered to be a top 5 type pick, has fallen all the way out of the first round for most people, and maybe that'll change at some point. Tariq Woolen talked about his insane speed, talked about the running back options. Look at this. Bernard Raymond is available at 50. He's available now, and he's their 54th ranked player, and that's again where the Seahawks would get a big old F if they drafted him in the first round, but we know that the Seahawks are capable of something like that. Carson Strong I would rate as a higher quarterback prospect than maybe anyone else. It's not a good class in general, so Carson Strong's got traits that the other guys don't have with his arm that makes me think like at least there's something there if you can get over the injury concerns, which the Seahawks shouldn't take that risk in the second round given his injury concerns. Kingsley Enagbare, Leo Chenal, Nicholas Petit-Frere, Calvin Austin III, Drake Jackson, Channing Tindall. There's a lot of great players here, a lot of great prospects, but more reason to think that maybe the Seahawks would trade down from the second round spot with one of their picks at least. You know what I mean? Like that seems not crazy. Let's do Channing Tindall because so many people want it to happen, it seems like, Seahawks fans. So why not? And the Seahawks, I think, could also do something else that we talked about here. Why not Kenneth Walker III? Just because that is a Seahawks type move, and I think that running back is undeniably something that Pete Carroll is looking for, and Chris Carson and Rashad Penny are no guarantee to start next week, let alone next year. And I know the Seahawks aren't they're not playing next week, but the Seahawks, that's just what the Seahawks are. That's just what the Seahawks do. Here in the third round, you could still get Carson Strong. You know what? Fuck it. We got Carson Strong on the Seahawks. It's a quarterback in the third round. The Seahawks have third round quarterback magic. Just ask David Green. Okay, so obviously the Seahawks have third round quarterback magic. There you go. Quarterback, edge, running back, linebacker. You know, I like doubling down whenever you can, so I would keep that in mind. If you've got an opportunity to double down, I say go for it. There's so many players here. Alec Lindstrom, there you go. The new center. That'll work. That'll work, folks. I think a center for the Seahawks is a must, and that one makes as much sense as pretty much any other. So to get a center here in round 4, not a bad pick at all, and I give myself a round of applause. Here we go for the 5th round and those back-to-back picks in the 5th round. The Seahawks have drafted Kenneth Murray at running back, so you can cross these guys off. And I said earlier, Kobe Bryant's got some, look at that, Cam Jurgens still available. Lots of ways to go with this. I think the Seahawks do have to think about their guard position long term. But Phil Haynes, getting him back on the original round tender, that would be huge for the Seahawks to just not really go for guard. Let's get Kobe Bryant, add a cornerback to the team, and that's right. We got back-to-back picks here. I like this guy, Kellen Diesch, tackle at Arizona State. Boom. The Seahawks have to have multiple tackles out of this draft, and for the Seahawks to grab Kellen Diesch here. Not that crazy in the 5th round. Pretty good value pick, I think. And it'll be interesting to see how the Seahawks total package here, the class of 2022, looks when we're all said and done. Let's get this 7th round pick completed, and then the Seahawks will be done. See how much I have to talk because this thing is going so slow. Here are the Seahawks coming along. This is the way I sing a song. Do you like my song? Okay, Seahawks back on the board. They have not taken any of these positions. Great, who cares? None of those are very important. Leon O'Neal Jr., not Leon O'Neal Sr., I'm assuming of the Bengals. The Seahawks have a lot of choices here, so sometimes you just want to go with a guy that's got a good name. So not the biggest need, but you got Smoke Monday on the Seahawks. Nobody's going to hate picking Smoke Monday. And Washington State, one of the first states to legalize marijuana. So there you go. Here are the Seahawks and what happened with the Seahawks in their draft. I've got quite a haul here for the Seahawks. Travon Walker in the first round, Channing Tindall, and Kenneth Walker in the second round. So you've got a couple of Walkers there. Carson Strong, a quarterback to develop there with Drew Lock at quarterback in the third round. Alec Lindstrom, a center in the fourth round. Fifth round, Kobe Bryant and Kellen Diesch. And seventh round, Smoke Monday. How does that compare to what we have over at PFF? Which mock draft do you like more? The PFF mock draft, Jordan Davis, Abe Lucas, Troy Landerson, Cam Jurgens, or the Draft Network mock draft, Travon Walker, Channing Tindall, Kenneth Walker, Carson Strong, Alec Lindstrom, Kobe Bryant, Kellen Diesch, Smoke Monday. Tell me in the comments which one is the better draft here between the two. Let me know. Sorry, Pro Football Network. This thing was a disaster. Even if this is somehow my fault, you should make sure that there are no user errors. So that's my criticism. That's my draft grade for that particular thing. And we see that with where Travon Walker is going in the mock drafts here, he's not even in the top 30. He's 30th. This is how fucked up mock drafts are right now. Because consensus big boards, he's number 8. It's not crazy at all. But consensus mock drafts, he's 30th. Because the consensus mock draft thing doesn't work that well. Because you can only go a guy once. There's going to be guys that are the most popular pick for multiple positions here. And that's, I think, how Travon Walker ends up all the way down to the 30th. But he could be number 1, number 2, even over Aiden Hutchinson. So that's Travon Walker. So let me know in the comments which ones you like. Go to seasidejoe.substack.com and subscribe to Seaside Joe for daily Seahawks newsletters. You're going to get an insane amount of great, yeah, that's right, I'm great content about the Seattle Seahawks, rivaled by nobody else. If you've got someone else who makes as much Seahawks content as I do, let me know in the comments, and I'll make sure to do better than them next week. Let's help get Seaside Joe to the top of the Substack rankings, and it's totally possible because Substack is not popular. So let's try and make that happen. Go to seasidejoe.substack.com and tell me in the comments, which draft do you like more? The Draft Network with Travon Walker, Channing Tindall, Kenneth Walker, and Carson Strong, or PFF with Jordan Davis, Abraham Lucas, Troy Anderson, and Cam Jurgens? Which one is better? Let me know in the comments. This is Kenneth Arthur for Seaside Joe. Thanks for watching. We'll be back soon with another take.